administration. There's only one Donald Trump, thank goodness, and he will leave the scene at the end of his second term.
Welcome back to The Unknowns. My name is Charlie Stone, and today we have a recurring guest, which we're excited to have on, John Bolton, former National Security Advisor for President Trump, Ambassador to the United Nations during George Bush, has advised multiple U.S. presidents on national security matters, best-selling author, including his most recent The Room Where It Happened. Ambassador, thank you for joining us again.
Glad to be back with you.
Well, there's some things that have occurred. How are you and how's your family doing?
Well, I've spent better Fridays, but putting it in perspective, remember on Inauguration Day in January, a day that's normally a pretty busy day for a new president, Trump had time to cancel my Secret Service protection, which had been provided pursuant to orders from President Biden because of Iran's efforts to assassinate me and many other people, including Donald Trump. For the strike against Qasem Soleimani of Iran back in January of 2020. So compared to being a target of the Iranians, it's sort of, you have to put it in that perspective. I think that's useful.
But this is a little bit different, right? I mean, I'm a lawyer. I'm actually a former prosecutor. You're a lawyer. If you are going to be indicted, this is the United States of America versus you. This is not a foreign country. So how does that sort of change how you process everything?
Well, I think you have to process everything in the Trump administration in light of Donald Trump. And I wrote in the foreword to the paperback edition of my book, which came out in January of 2024, that this would be a retribution presidency. And I think, unfortunately, that prediction is coming true, not just with respect to me, but with respect to a lot of other people, a lot of other institutions and actors in the political process. Donald Trump really doesn't have a philosophy. He certainly doesn't have a national security grand strategy. He really doesn't do policy in the way most people in Washington understand that. He's very transactional, and he tends to see things through the prism of his personal relations with someone. So in international affairs, if he feels he has a good personal relationship with a foreign leader, let's say Vladimir Putin, then he thinks that U.S. relations with Russia are very good. Now, that's obviously a terrible oversimplification, but that's how he sees it. And likewise, when he sees somebody as an opponent, it's a personal matter for him. And whether it's on an issue in Congress or something else, that's how he sees things.
Washington has always been a rough and tumble place, right? And they always say that if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. But this is something else, right? Just the overt admission of going after political opponents using the United States Justice Department. I mean, you're a student of history. Are we in uncharted waters here?
Well, unfortunately, we're not in uncharted waters. I can testify to that personally because he came after me in his first term when my book was about to be published. He tried to stop it from being published. He tried various other things in order to prevent the book from coming out. Obviously, he failed in that. And the proceedings that he brought ultimately were closed out by the Department of Justice after he was defeated in the election and Biden was sworn in, and the career attorneys in the Justice Department took control of the case again. We had actually gotten an order from the judge in the civil case granting us discovery against the government. Very, very unusual order because of what we saw pretty clearly as undue influence by the White House over the Department of Justice, and I think that is indicative even back then of how concerned the court system was. So this is this idea that, as the saying goes, in the words of a Latin American dictator of about 100 years ago, for my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law.
James Comey, who was recently indicted, he released a statement the same day. And I'd like to read that statement. He said, "I'm not afraid, and I hope you are not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it," which it does. Obviously, I assume you saw that statement. Does that resonate with you? And then the other question is, do you have a statement ready in case you're indicted?
Well, I have watched the Comey situation obviously very closely, and will continue to follow it. I really don't want to comment on what he said or on what I may say in future circumstances for obvious reasons, I think.
Trump gotten some resistance, it appears, to proceed against Comey, and then he appointed Lindsay Halligan as a prosecutor who has no prior prosecutorial experience. The ethics that a lawyer has to abide by, and specifically prosecutors have to abide by, are pretty clear. I mean, the American Bar Association, Rule 3.8F, they have to refrain from extrajudicial comments that heighten public condemnation. Trump called Comey sick, radical left, and a dirty cop. Even Halligan said that, this is a breach of public trust at an extraordinary level. How do the ethics, in each state, sort of the bar associations in each state, get control over attorneys?
I think legal ethics, although some call it an oxymoron like military intelligence, actually are quite important. And I'm an alumnus of the Justice Department in the Reagan administration. I was the head of the Civil Division, and before that, the head of Legislative Affairs. So I think the integrity of the Department of Justice is of incredible national importance, as is, I think, the president's responsibility under the Constitution, in the words of the Constitution, to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And I think most people in the Department of Justice over decades have understood what that meant and what it should mean, and I hope that continues.
What advice do you give to Americans that are going through this sort of new normal?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand is that Trump is an aberration. It's true that we elected him twice. Many foreigners that I speak with say, how can you call it an aberration when he's been elected twice? And the answer is, certainly it's true he's been elected twice, but he's still an aberration. There's only one Donald Trump, thank goodness, and he will leave the scene at the end of his second term. What conduct in a wide variety of areas in the Trump administration shows is that in addition to the Constitution and laws, we've had norms and rules of conduct that have governed a lot of behavior that when challenged, require people to stand up and defend them and not simply remain silent. So I think if people simply talk about what their principles are and defend their principles, and they don't have to get personal about it, but they can talk about what the principles are, I think that will help strengthen resistance to an aberration that risks causing us considerable damage. I think damage was caused in the first term. I think it's repairable. I think damage has been caused in the second term, and I mean this really across the policy universe, that so far that can be corrected as well. But it's a very different situation than we've had before, and it should say to members of Congress in particular, of both parties, when you look at many of the statutes that are on the books today that either provide authority for the president or attempt to constrain the president's conduct, they have proven to be not worded very well, and that there are a lot of legislative fixes that people should be considering for the time after Trump leaves or beginning before he leaves.
Well, there's no doubt that Trump has been breaking norms and massing more power to the presidency of the United States. How do you respond to people who say, that's what I voted for, but do they understand that someone else could be president? They could have a different agenda, and this sort of amassing presidential power may not be in their interest at that time.
Well, that goes to the question of whether people are following principles or simply following Donald Trump, because he doesn't have any philosophical principles to speak of. And I would say, especially to Republicans, when you see something that Trump tries to do, you have to ask yourself, how would I feel if there were a left-wing Democrat in office doing, from that perspective, what Trump is doing at the current time? For example, look at the effort within the private universities using the power of government grants. If people who are allowing Trump to do this would think about what happened if in 2028 a Democrat were elected who said, I'm going to condition all grants to universities on full out, all 100% DEI prescriptions and wokeness to the nth degree. How would you feel about that? Well, we wouldn't like it. So that is the kind of skeptical approach that I think especially conservatives should have. We're the ones who are concerned about excessive power in the federal government. And I think the lesson really was supplied by a great conservative philosopher, Bill Miller, not well known. He ran as vice presidential nominee with Barry Goldwater. And he said in the 1964 campaign, others have picked this up, but Bill Miller's best insight was the government that is big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take everything you have. So universities, be aware.
Anything in your opinion that Donald J. Trump has done correct?
Well, I think the Mexican border is largely sealed off. He did that in the first term as well. And I think it's the right thing to do. He knows this is an 80-20 issue. It's a separate issue from deporting illegal aliens, which I think he's making a mess of. But it is correct to say that the United States, the government of the United States, should decide who gets into the country. My own personal view is we need substantially larger legal immigration. But the question is that we decide who is going to come in, not the would-be immigrants. I mean, the people who come across the border are really jumping the line. If they're trying to get in front of other people who have followed our laws, who have signed up for an immigration visa, but still haven't gotten in. And I think it shows the power of deterrence. If you think you're going to walk across Central America and Mexico, get to the Rio Grande and be turned away, sensible people are just going to stay at home. And maybe even they'd fill out the application to immigrate and get in at some point in the future. That's the right way to do it.
Last question. Obviously, you're going through a lot. I'm just curious if you have any advice, or how do you manage stress? Like, do you play Sudoku? Do you play Wordle?
I do interviews with journalists. That's what gets me through it. Look, you just live one day at a time. That's how it works.
All right. Well, I usually ask the guests anything unknown about you'd like to share. You did share something last time, but I'm just curious, like, have you learned anything from August 22nd to today that's sort of unknown?
No, I can't think of anything offhand. Maybe ask me a year or two from now. Maybe I'll have a better answer.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and we wish you and your family the best moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.